So John Jaster is a senior consulting software engineer at Blue Slate, and as a member of the innovation execution team, he leads the relational database aspect, but also is responsible for the overall infrastructure. And so, John, we're going to chat today about some of the work we've been doing to get an infrastructure put together for the Innovation Lab. To start off, what types of software products were involved in this?
Well, we took a look at some of the categories that were going to be needed for the lab. We included the application server, the business rules engine, the workflow engine, the analytics engine, as well as the semantic technology stack, which has different components. And we also looked at some of the supporting technology, such as the relational database, the messaging layer, the MQ layer, as well as the project management tool and the source code repository.
Okay, a lot of components going on. How many different vendors were you actually trying to work with to figure this out?
We ended up looking at 12 different software vendors for the actual application components. They came from 8 different vendors or open source projects. And that didn't even include the hardware vendor or the virtualization or operating system vendor. So overall, there was close to 15 different hardware and software components that we had to look at.
So any challenges as you discussed what you were trying to accomplish with these vendors?
Well, I'm just starting to learn some of this technology. I've been working in healthcare and dealing with claim adjudication and dealing with databases. So that was all pretty familiar to me. The semantic technology was new to me, and the analytics was something I hadn't been exposed to, so I had a lot of learning to do. And at this point in time, I don't really have a picture in my head as to the final solution that we're building. So I had to rely on a lot of assumptions. I had to ask a lot of questions. And when I actually went out to the vendors, I found that I couldn't really articulate exactly what our requirements were. So I had to do a lot of guesswork, and I had to rely on some of the vendors' expertise. So in some cases, like especially with the semantic technology stack vendor, I had to just rely on their recommendation for this is what we would suggest as a suggested sizing or suggested system configuration. I had to kind of take their word for it. So once we start putting it together, we'll have a better sense of whether that's suitable or overkill or underkill.
Okay. The lab is really focused on proving out the concepts around the cognitive corporation and the feedback loop and sharing of information to create a learning organization. What types of hardware were not part of this initial design?
Well, we're going to be building the whole solution on top of a virtualized infrastructure. So that frees us from having to actually look at network switches, routers, firewalls, because that will all be part of the virtual infrastructure. So we didn't really have to worry about that, and also we assumed that the physical hosting facility, which include like physical security, power, cooling, remote access, that was already in place. So we didn't actually have to spec that out. We're just concerning ourselves with the most interesting parts, which is primarily the application components, and then we'll also be building the virtualization and the operating systems that those will run on.
And you mentioned that, having done a lot of work in healthcare space, and given the fact that Blue Slate really has a healthcare and financial services background, was any security thought about in the infrastructure itself in terms of how this is being set up?
Yes. The security is going to be an important design consideration as we start building this out, and we're going to definitely want to get the security right. I think the solution that we're looking at is going to be fairly compartmentalized. That is, there's not going to be really meshed integration. Each component is going to be somewhat isolated, and so each one will have its own security design. But our plan is we're going to build a set of services that all the different components can rely on and share. For example, the authentication piece, we're planning to use Active Directory, and I'm anticipating that we're going to be using a significant amount of certificates. So we'll probably have our own certificate authority, and so that all the trust will be integrated. So we are definitely concerned. We know that there's a lot of opportunities for fraud. There's a lot of regulatory requirements that we have to meet, and so we'll definitely keep that in mind as we design it.
Excellent. And I think to kind of wrap this up, from your point of view, you're going through a hardware sizing exercise, and any business goes through that when they procure these types of systems. What guidance would you give to people based on the experience that you've had doing this and other projects that you've worked on?
Sure. We in this case, we don't have a legacy system that usually in sizing, we take a look at the legacy system and we have some statistics or measurements that we can rely on. With this project, we really didn't have that. We had a lot of guesswork. We have a lot of learning yet to do. And so I fully anticipate that we're going to take some wrong turns and some course corrections. And so really being flexible is the important part for us at this phase of the project. For example, we know that there's going to be a significant amount of CPU processing that's going to be needed, especially for the analytics, but also in other parts of the application. We don't really know exactly where the resources are going to be needed. So that's why using virtualization was key for us, because that allows us to have some of our resources, such as the CPU cores, dynamically shared by the different components and not siloed into one server or another server. Similarly, with the memory resources, that won't be quite as dynamic, but we could easily reconfigure that and make adjustments as we learn more and as we start to do testing. Also, with the storage, I'm thinking of using a SAN, such as an iSCSI SAN, so that we can keep our storage independent from the application servers, so that we can easily adapt the storage where it's needed the most. And so the virtualization is going to be key. And then, as we learn, what we're going to be planning to do is build our development environment first and learn as much as we can there. And before we make our firm plans for our test and production environments, and then we'll take the lessons learned in development and hopefully get the test and production environments right, or at least closer to right, once we get to that point.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for taking some time to talk to us about how this process is going. Look forward to hearing more about it.
You're welcome.